Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
The Defense Department's Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office has been in a period of transition lately. Several years after its creation, Pentagon leaders decided last year to fold the CDAO into the Office of the Undersecretary for Research and Engineering. Before that, CDAO reported directly to the Deputy Secretary of Defense. Andrew Mapes is the acting Principal Deputy Chief Digital and AI Officer. He talked with Federal News Network's Anastasia Obis about the realignment and how it's positioning CDAO to deliver AI capabilities at scale.
With the continued unification of the innovation ecosystem under the CTO, I think there's been a great opportunity for us to just continue to move much more quickly. And so, again, CDAO historically, I think there have been a number of lessons learned along that journey since CDAO came into existence about 4 years or so ago. And the realignment within the CTO has enabled us to be much more focused on execution of capability and really working with stakeholders to identify what those enterprise needs are for the department. The small things like, not having to manage maintain an enterprise business office just for our own organization, and really getting us laser focused on delivering capability to the warfighter. That's I think for me, one of the biggest positive changes that we've had since we've realigned within the CTO, but also having just the designation of the critical technology area from Honorable Michael as applied AI being the front and center. Like those are strong signals to the department that historically we may not have had in our prior alignment. So. It's been about an 8-month journey at this point, but I think if anything, there was concern about are we moving AI down or burying it within the organization? But if anything, I think it's made it more prominent and has freed us up to move much more quickly to be able to execute the AI strategy.
All right, and could you maybe talk to some of the lessons learned from previous reorganizations that are informing your current realignment?
Sure. A lot of there's been a number of pilots or projects that CDAO has historically done that I talked a little bit previously about how they may not have really had true enterprise value, whether it was a user base that was not sufficient enough to warrant us continue to offer it as an enterprise capability, or the price point for the capability was such that we could not continue to offer it as an enterprise capability. Or there was not a transition plan on the back end where the pilot was kicked off and then it was not something that could be transitioned to scale or received by an organization to own the program going forward. Those kinds of things I think we're much more conscious of and wanting to ensure that remains a focus of what exactly it is that CDAO needs to offer for the entire department, but then also continue to serve those stakeholders to help guide them to where exactly they need to go for, if they need to deploy an app that is not an enterprise application, like where is an environment that can support that. I think also continue to learn and evolve how we can work with industry to be able to bring capabilities into the department, and really having an understanding on both sides that there needs to be a degree of risk here, given the fast moving nature of capability evolving, but also ensuring that industry understands that it's expected and a positive thing for them to continue to take a bit of risk here, and for us to be able to work together to not only understand what are the capabilities that private sector is bringing to us, but also being able to communicate to them what those requirements are so that industry can help us understand, hey, I have this exquisite tool and I think it's going to meet this specific problem. And so things like the continued evolution of Tradewin Solutions Marketplace as an entry point for industry to come in to work not just with CDAO, but others within the department as well, and also looking at SIBR and SITR opportunities within the department too.
Yeah, and could you expand a little bit on that evolution of working with industry, how that's been going?
Yeah, I think it's really the same story I talked about as far as the government and military within the Pentagon having a much more robust and mature roster to work with. The same can be said for industry as well. I'm big on sports analogies. I think this is very much a team sport where everybody has a position in the game. This is not something that CDAO is going to organically be able to solve on our own. It's also something that Tech Force is not going to be the only solution, and different capabilities are not going to be the only solution. There are multiple pieces to this where everybody has a part, and I think to my earlier point of there is so much innovation and capability being brought to us, which is fantastic. We just need to continue to have those conversations, engagement with industry, and really having industry help connect the dots for us on, I know you have this problem and this is the capability that I think can solve it, and really understanding what the CDAO focus and mission is and what the department's focus and mission is. Not necessarily looking to solve the problems that the department may have had 2 or 3 years ago.
That's Andrew Mapes, the Pentagon's Acting Principal Deputy Chief Digital and AI Officer. Watch his full discussion with Anastasia Obis at federalnewsnetwork.com.
Sean O'Keefe, former Navy Secretary, NASA Administrator, and senior leader across multiple presidential administrations, reflects on the principles that shaped his long federal career. In this episode of Lessons in Leadership, he joined Shane Canfield, CEO of WEPA, to discuss motivating teams through uncertainty, leading across agencies, and staying rooted in mission during times of public scrutiny and change.
Hello, and welcome to the Lessons in Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Shane Canfield, CEO of WEPA. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Sean O'Keefe, former NASA Administrator, former Deputy Director of the Office of Management and Budget, former Secretary of the Navy, former Comptroller and CFO of the Defense Department, and Professor Emeritus at Syracuse University's Maxwell School of Public Affairs. Welcome, and thank you for joining.
Well, thank you, Shane. Delight to be with you. Appreciate it very much.
What first drew you into public service, and when was it evident to you that leadership was an important part of the roles you played?
Well, I grew up around the public service. My dad was a career naval officer. He was a submariner, and we lived all over the place throughout the country. And as a result, I got an up-close and personal understanding through him, as well as through all the folks he associated with and the environments he was working in, just what the extraordinary value is of public service and what is it that would motivate people to want to be engaged in it and to be really involving themselves in what is something larger than themselves. And the only place that is really formulated properly is within the public sector and the public service. That again is the beneficiary or the beneficiaries are the citizens of the nation, the community, and the region in which you live.
Did you think about leadership early on, saying, I need to be a great leader and therefore I'm going to learn how to do it, or did you just naturally evolve into it? Any thoughts on that?
I guess it evolved by the great good fortune of being witness to several really extraordinary leaders, people who really did take the initiative to engage others in the task, to pull together and motivate folks to really contribute their very best to achieve an outcome. And I saw the value of that on multiple occasions and found that was the primary ingredient, the trait, the characteristic that needed to be exhibited is the fundamentals of leadership in moving everyone engaged towards a common objective.
You have served under several presidents. Can you talk a little bit about that? What were there challenges to overcome, or were you away from politics so you didn't get? Talk about that a little bit. how does it differ as you serve through a transition, or does leadership stay the same?
Oh no, it's it's really critically important in transition cases, to be sure. But the two presidents that I served in their administrations were President George H.W. Bush and President George W. Bush, in two different eras, obviously. But as a consequence, that was the closest I came to understanding the nature of the individuals who were in that ultimate leadership capacity, and their capability to motivate. Both of them were just extraordinarily inspiring people who motivated everybody to be part of the solution. But most importantly, they also had a capacity of really designating what needed to be done, and you knew that they were perfectly prepared to do it themselves. And that made the task that much more achievable. There were several different circumstances, and understanding what the objectives of the senior leadership are all about.
You've worked for different kinds of organizations, political administrations, and then government departments, agencies, and then private sector, and now academia. How does that affect your leadership style? Or do you find that leadership, the core tenets of leadership, are applicable no matter what the organization you find yourself in and having to lead? It doesn't matter where you are, that the core leadership characteristics are the same? Are they different? Are you adapting?
Well, there's a common myth in my judgment, and I'm probably the minority view of this in the academic field of public management. That common myth is that you can't apply the same principles in the public sector that you do in the private sector.
Yeah.
I never found that to be an impediment.
Okay.
It was always a circumstance where, strategy, the focus on the talent, people engaged, the process to going through decision making, the integrity imperative that must be there in order to demonstrate the absolute conviction of what's intended here, as well as the moral standing of what it is you're attempting to achieve. All those factors are very much the same. It's going to have its nuances, and there are very distinctive, differentiators within those organizations and those sectors. But at the same time, those basic principles, those tenets, foundations of what make up organizations and organization theory, in so many ways are fundamentally the same. And how you employ those may be slightly nuanced to match the condition, but they all are imperative in the same direction.
A little bit of a different direction. You were part of the very first cohort of what is now Presidential Management Intern Program, later became the Presidential Management Fellows Program. What did that early experience teach you about leading within government?
The Presidential Management Intern Program, as it started, was designed for just that purpose: a focus on public management, a focus on implementation. And its evolution over time has been extraordinary. It mystifies me why that has been the subject now of an executive order that has dismantled it. And it's absolutely unconscionable, given the nature of the hundreds, thousands of people who've moved through that program in the course of the last nearly 50 years, that have gone on in some cases to be senior executives within the federal government, and in other cases they've moved on to other kinds of pursuits. But even with that, even for those who have left the service, they walked away with an appreciation of what public service is all about, why it matters, and why this is so critical to get it right. Because by and large, the reason why these functions are delegated to the public sector is because no one else can do it. Usually that's the case. It takes that kind of focus of a public entity in order to achieve an outcome that frankly would not be achieved in other spheres. So as a result of that, it gave me an incredibly in-depth understanding of that process at a very early stage in my career that has lasted the entirety of that professional experience.
A closing question. Who has influenced your leadership style, and what about their example stays with you? And that question can be cast broadly. So, inside government, outside government, perhaps not government at all, somebody that you've met, reported to, been mentored by, a broad net. But when you think about broadly, when you think about who has influenced you, who comes to mind?
I would have to say that the number one, hands down, greatest influence during the course of my life was my dad. He was an engineer, so everything was a calculated risk. I think I was probably 25 before I realized the answer was not to be found for everything in a slide rule, but that was his bent, his mindset, and he taught me how to think critically, and it really was one of the most extraordinary attributes. And he was an inspiring parent and mentor in so many ways. And all the different things I've done throughout the course of his life, I had the opportunity through much of it to be able to consult with him on a variety of things, and always walked away with a more informed perspective. Dad was an extraordinary public servant in his own right.
Well, Sean, thank you very much for sharing your insights and experiences. It has been a pleasure talking.
I'm delighted to be with you, Shane. Thank you so much for doing this.
And this is Shane Canfield, CEO of WEPA, reminding you to empower your team and embrace challenges. Until the next time on Lessons in Leadership.
Find the full podcast and future episodes of Lessons in Leadership on the Federal News Network app and anywhere you enjoy your podcasts.